What is up, New Beginnings Church? Happy Thursday morning to you, and welcome to this devotional series called Lessons from Peter. We're in 1 Peter chapter 3 still, and this is the next chunk. So again, he's addressed how we think about earthly authorities, slaves to masters, wives to husbands, husbands to wives, and now he's just going to give you, look, everybody. This is for everybody. He says, finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate, and be humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult for insult, but on the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called so that you may inherit a blessing. So again, he's just addressing the idea of, hey, we live differently in this world. Even in the midst of persecution, we rise above it by having Christ-like attitude and Christ-like character. We think differently. We treat people differently. We do not follow the pattern of this world. It's not okay for wives to disrespect their husbands or for husbands to bully their wives. It's not okay for slaves just to run off and say, I'm free in Christ. You know, it's not okay for you to tell earthly authorities, hey, we don't care about you. I only serve Jesus. He goes, no. We live a life of humility, of respect, and of honor, so that when we speak, this is the big walkaway, so that when we speak, people are like, oh, they are on to something. They've discovered something. And so in this last phrase, he gives you really 5 things to think about. Number 1 was this. He goes, be like-minded. You know, as Christians, what we want to do is this. Let's get unified on some big ideas, because we're so diverse as Christians. Like, I ask myself, well, how in the world we're so diverse with different personalities, different backgrounds, even different denominational flows or whatever. Like, how can we be like-minded? And I think the answer is to this. The way that it is easy to be like-minded is to major on the major and to not worry about the minors. You know, most denominations are really formed out of argument. Like, oh, I think this. Well, I think this. Well, we disagree, so I'm going to go start my own camp. And so, but if we were to ask, like, hey, do you believe Jesus is the Son of God, crucified and risen from the dead? Like, yeah. All right, well, that's awesome. We are on the same page over something really big. Hey, do you believe God's the creator of heaven and earth? Do you believe the scriptures are divinely inspired? Do you believe, like, there's enough big things that we're all in agreement on, and where we usually argue and disagree and get away from that unity and that like-mindedness, we start arguing over petty stuff that honestly, if people who had no religious background and no Christian background, if they heard us arguing, they would think we're silly and we would be embarrassed, because we would be arguing over things that are so petty and so non-essential to really the advancement of the gospel, which is really the second thing I want to think about. When we need to be like-minded, I think you can be like-minded in the major aspects of who God is and of what Christianity is. The other one is this, though. You can be like-minded about your purpose. Because as much as we may disagree over how we interpret Genesis 1 and 2, or how we interpret the book of Revelation, or I'll tell you what we don't. Nobody argues over whether we should feed the poor. Nobody argues over whether or not we should clothe people. Nobody argues over whether we should visit people in prison. Nobody argues over these big ideas of mission. Nobody argues over like, no, can we help suffering people? Can we take people and add value and dignity and life back to them? That is massive. And we all agree on that. And we all agree on some major things. You know what that means? It should be easy to become like-minded. But the enemy is so clever and so crafty. And his aim is divisiveness. His aim is to separate us, because when we don't have unity, we're not nearly as powerful. And so his plea is to be like-minded. To be sympathetic was number 2. I'm going to rapid fire through these last ones. To be sympathetic. Now, the Bible doesn't use sympathetic in a technical term. If you look it up in the Greek, it actually has to the idea of like feeling it in your gut. Actually, it's a word that relates back to your bowels. So like, it's actually really similar to the idea of being tenderhearted and being empathetic. It's like, no. We want to feel it, right? And so like from my gut, from my bowels, I want to feel it and be compassionate towards you. Love one another. Love one another. Again, that's the biggest theme of the entire New Testament. Be compassionate. Now, this idea of being compassionate really has to do with acts of kindness. So it's one thing to say, hey, I love you. I love you so much. It is another thing to say, hey, here is some money. Here is some food. Hey, I went on my way to do this for you. These are acts of compassion. And then lastly, humility. Again, for us to be like-minded, we're going to have to humble ourselves. We're going to have to stop thinking of ourselves first and putting ourselves first and making it all about us. Humility, I love this C.S. Lewis quote, is that humility is not thinking less of myself. It's just thinking of myself less. And the less I think about me and the more I try to add value to you, the better my life is. And so let us be a people who are different, who are genuinely the light of the world, the salt of the earth. Church, I love you so much. May you go out today and find people and say, how can I do acts of kindness? How can I be humble? How can I be compassionate? How can I be like-minded with my brothers and sisters in Christ? And let us show the world the love of Christ. Church, I love you so much. God bless you, and I will see you tomorrow.